Like, we went from being matrilineal tribes,
Mhm.
where everybody shared all the goods and everything like that, and all of a sudden you get, the patriarchal tribes coming in and conquering, and suddenly the sky gods are marrying the goddess and
Mm.
walking on. And also, like, it becomes a whole thing about how we have to own, like, we own land and and so all of a sudden our pleasure becomes something that has to be for one specific person.
Welcome to Wild and Finally Fucking Free, the show for disruptors, rebels, and revolutionaries who know they're here to change the damn world. I'm Kylie Patchett, your voice and visibility catalyst, and here we dive into unapologetic truth, magnetic messaging, and visibility that actually feels good in your body, your bones, and your business. We share the stories of the out-of-the-box, neuro-sparkly, creative, witchy wild ones, rewriting how we live, love, learn, and lead. This isn't about being louder. It's about being rooted, resonant, and regulated so you can be real, raw, and ready to roar. If you're done contorting yourself to fit the mold and you're ready to own your voice, your power, and your place in the revolution, welcome home. Let's dive in. Hi there. Welcome to the podcast again. This is part 2 of a 2-part podcast with Tara Sullivan, who is a spiritual anarchist. We are talking about her release of her signature program, Elements of Which, all about her journey into self-sovereignty, pleasure as protest, spiritual anarchy, and coming home to yourself under the layers of conditioning. If you're a woman who has at any point in your life thought, how the fuck did I get here? How have I come so far away from who I am underneath all the layers of conditioning? This is an episode for you. This is a call to arms. I'm so excited to share it. If you haven't listened to part 1, go back and listen to that and let's dive in. Because I think the extremism, it's like pick a camp and it's like, I'm an individual human and there's lots of nuances about how I think and feel about lots of different things. And to have communities like what you have with Coven and what you're creating online, where people are welcome to come as with whatever opinion that they have. And exactly like you said, yes, I may not agree necessarily, and that may not be my choice, but I'm not going to make you the enemy if you don't align 1,000%, because then that's just more oppression. Like, we're just creating more of the same. Can you tell me, I remember you saying to me, like, you had a moment in time where, and I think it was when you were writing the book, which I would also love for you to talk about, because it's coming back to the rules and the commandments, right? Where you had the idea for the program that you're just about to open in February, which is called Elements of, which I'm super excited about. I feel like the timing is perfect. How did that come to you? Because for someone who is so connected to energy and the flow of life, yeah, I really would love to know how that kind of fell into your awareness.
Yeah, it was like 2 years. I think it was 2 years ago in like
Mm,
October. So
mm,
just a little about the 2 year mark. And it was right before Halloween here. And of course, already being deeply into Coven and
yeah,
deeply into wickedness and like
yeah,
all of that kind of stuff. I was like sort of like walking along on my way to work and like I was thinking about there are those songs out there about like woman in total charge of herself and
yes.
woman in total control or
Hmm.
true that kind of stuff. And I like those, but I was like, I need a better C. Like,
Yes.
and charge just doesn't work for me. Like, and so, like, again, with that, like, I feel like I'm often like tumbling ideas
Hmm.
around
Hmm.
my head, like, and all of a sudden it was like celebration, a woman in true celebration of herself. And that was just like, I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Hellraiser with the puzzle box. But this is the moment where the puzzle box twists and everything like that. And when it gets to the right place, it's like all this light pours out.
Yes. Yep. Yep.
That kind of moment, like the pieces slotted together was like, huh.
It's like, yep, universal happened.
And again, with this whole idea of like when we are in true celebration of ourselves, when we are accepting of all of our parts, when we enjoy who we are, like, yes, of course, that's when we become magical.
Yeah.
That's of course when we find out all of our gifts and talents. Like, of course, when that happens.
Yeah.
So like that sort of tumbled around. And then it was like, oh, now we need to do like let's talk about like how we like align with the cycle of the universe, and like we as women particularly, right, like we are cyclical and so is the world, like we, days and weeks and months and years and like around the sun, and like so the first version of which was very much about aligning with the energies that were going on in it. So like I made these amazing workbooks for everybody who participated, where every day there was a daily prompt that like lined up with the moon cycle and like how do we eat in alignment and all of that. And that was amazing. And like lots of people got a lot out of that. And but then somewhere along the line in the sort of like aftermath of that, as I was thinking about it, I was sort of in this place of like, oh wait, I put the cart before the horse.
Which you and I have in common.
Yeah, well, I'm ahead on this. Like, the first thing we need to do is actually reclaim our witch before we can get our witch. Like, we got to do the work in here of alignment before we do the work out there for alignment.
Yeah.
So that's when this new elements of witch started bubbling, and that in and of itself, like as we were talking about it, and I'm one of those people who always likes a structure for a workshop, and I was thinking about sort of like how long I wanted it to be, and was thinking like 70 days, something like that. And then I was like, oh, well, witchiness, I'll use the pentagram. Of course, that makes total sense. That's earth, air, fire, water, spirit. Great. And then somewhere in the process of working with that, I was like, oh, thank you. Because earth, air, fire, water, spirit, pleasure and passion is fire. And earth is body, and water is emotions, and air is thoughts, and spirit is connection with higher power. Those are absolutely the tools of spiritual anarchy. Like these are the things that we need to reclaim in order to actually blow up those boxes and become sovereign in our own lives again.
And it was connection to our power, because as above, so below, like everything that's happening in the cosmos is happening inside of us, but we've been disconnected from it.
Totally. And just that, again, like it was one of those gifts of the universe. It was like, so I'm going to use the pentacle. Like that makes sense as a structure. And then, wow, that's brilliant. Thank you for that. Like,
so good. As you were saying the elements, I have this picture in my head of like this beautiful golden thread going down each of the. I love drawing stars. I draw stars all over everything. Always have. I was looking at a workbook from like grade 5 when I was chucking things out on the weekend, and they have like stars all over it. Like, oh my god, there was literally signposts back then when I was 10. But yeah, that like the golden thread of the, and it also reminds me, like echoes the 5 element theory, is like understanding that there is a flow of all of these elements inside of us, and that it is the harmony. It's kind of back to that, like, what needs to kind of quiet down a little bit? What needs to be invited to its full expression? How do we get into more flow with our own cycle, with the cycle of the moon, with the cycle of everything? Oh, I've got goosebumps. I remember when we first started talking about elements of witch in general. And you're like, and I can do this and this and this. And I was like, oh, this is like a whole series of magical, like, work. What do we call them? We didn't end up calling them workshops. It's like an experience is what I want to say, because I feel like it's like immersion. Go in and then come out. Tell us a little bit about the structure of the actual online program. So it starts on February 15th, goes to the 22nd. So very, very soon.
yes. And I actually took a page out of your book with Scene, in that the opening and closing circles are live on Zoom.
Yeah.
And one of the things I loved about Scene was that because you were putting up the days in between those circles, like they were recorded, and there was an opportunity to do them whenever it actually worked.
Yes. Yeah.
And I'm really aware that my soulmate clients are women whose to-do list is never done.
Yeah.
We're women, we're out there, we've got big lives, and we're doing a lot of things. And so to find the time to do our own personal work, I wanted it to be something where people could like drop in in their own time frame, as opposed to like you have to show up on Zoom at this time every single night for a week, which doesn't work for anyone. Not well, anyway. At least in my experience, it doesn't work for me. Let's say,
well, and I would say that as an indication it doesn't work for your soulmate clients, right? And having done activations where it has been, 5 days every day, it's too much for people. It's too much for me as a facilitator as well. I love the fact that you've taken like this beautiful Coven community space and translated it to an online experience where people get to marinate in your energy to open the circle. Then they dive into the 5 elements each day, or there's 2 days.
there's 2 days of pleasure because one day is not enough.
And they get this beautiful experience. And when we were kind of like talking about the key takeaways, it's like it's spiritual anarchy, it's sacred insurgency. Because as we were talking about, it's like we can't change the world without actually clearing out the shit. So this is like step 1 of not only, it's not just clearing out the shit, it's becoming aware of what's under there. Because so much of this is unconscious. And it's not until we come into spaces like this.
Yeah, and I think it's not only the clearing out, but it's also about allowing ourselves to be resourced, right? When we are disconnected from our pleasure, when we're disconnected from our bodies, when we're not paying attention to everything our emotions are telling us, when our inner critic is running and when we think that we need somebody else to interpret the universe from us, like that saps our energy. And, I always come back to Audre Lorde and the uses of the erotic, and she says, for women in particular, for feminine energy, like one of the greatest resources is pleasure. It fills our wells. It helps us to define who we are as humans. And it also gives us a directional signal, a compass to operate in the world. And like, so yes, to the like clearing out the shit, but also like, let's plug ourselves back into the truth of ourselves and the truth of the universe so that we actually have all the energy that we need in order to go out there and build the revolutions that we want them to.
I've got a jukebox in my head, as you know, 24/7, and I've got Children of the Revolution playing. Because we are in revolutionary times. Like there is a huge shift happening, and those of us who are here to be part of the change are being called to arms. And that's why that rally cry was actually, we'll link to anyone who hasn't seen the rally cry on Instagram, absolutely fucking needs to go. And just like, I feel like it should be everyone's homework on the daily. It's like, you cannot listen to what you say in that clip without having this like cellular response to the call to your own power and magic and sovereignty and saying no to the systems of oppression. I want to talk about pleasure for a second, because which is the 15th to 22nd, elements of which, to use the whole title, which we'll put in the show notes. You also have an on-demand soul soak called Pleasure, which is something that people can access whenever they want. So tell us about that, because you said to me in a call, you were like, pleasure is protest. And I was like, fuck, yes. Because I have such a, like, and I've talked about this on the podcast before, I'm very much I have to get the things done before I get the joy or the pleasure. And and that's actually thanks to a lot of the conversations and exposure to you and your work where I've gone, no, I've got to ask about, like, this is about filling me up so that then I can turn up. But yeah, when you said pleasure is protest, I'm like, oh, hello, that's one of those chiropractic adjustments of the soul moment. So tell us a bit about pleasure as well.
Right. So pleasure, I mean, it's a 3-part workshop, and it's on demand, so it's right there. There's a little bit at the beginning, which is sort of the history of how we went from worshiping the goddess and pleasure being a sacrament to the where we are now, which is right. Like you might be allowed pleasure after you've done everything else, but even then, pleasure is something that we should be suspect for,
and it can only be a certain way for good girls, which is the vast majority of gender socialization for females, is good girls or people pleasing or caretaking or whatever. Yeah,
and there's a direct line. Again, it's politics, and it's right. Like we went from being matrilineal tribes, where everybody shared all the goods and everything like that, and all of a sudden you get the patriarchal tribes coming in and conquering, and suddenly the sky gods are marrying the goddess and walking on. Yeah, and like the feminine gets, and also like it becomes a whole thing about how we have to own Like we own land and and so all of a sudden our pleasure becomes something that has to be for one specific person, because if you're going to pass on your goods to your children, you need to
It's
know that
got to
they're
be a
your
woman.
children. So now we got to lock women up in chastity belts, and the idea of women as chaotic pleasure machines is born in all of that. And then you get Plato, Plato,
Yes.
for a scientific method and all that kind of stuff,
Yes.
critical thinking. But his whole thing about the body being a trap for the soul, the duality of that, like we want to get away from the body,
The body is like evil, and where like it can lead you astray. It's like, no, it is the one source of truth.
away from spirit,
Yeah.
because that's what we're supposed to be.
Yeah.
And then the early church fathers pick that up and run with it, which is where we get the concept of original sin and the idea that, that's born through women and all of that kind of stuff. And then it gets picked up again by Martin Luther and the Calvinists and all of that, which then becomes the whole Puritan work ethic, where we're just supposed to be grinding, and that you're allowed to have pleasure when you get to heaven, but pleasure here, absolutely not. And now we're here where, we're in a place where you're starting to see a little bit of rebellion. Like a couple of years ago, I think it was the first summer of the COVID lockdown, where suddenly like there were all these news stories about CEOs pitching a fit about people quiet quitting. And the idea of it was like, oh, I'm only going to do the work that you're paying me for, the hours that you're actually paying me to do it.
Yes. Horrendous. Thank you.
And the idea that what that made clear to me, the fact that they were having such a temper tantrum about it, was like, how much of the world economy is being run on unpaid labor?
Lots of it in homes and in corporations. Yeah.
And, but the person who overextends themselves, and you see it in mommy culture everywhere. Like the person who's baking those organic cupcakes while running the dance mom circuit and getting the kids to baseball practice
and looking like a supermodel.
And being a CEO,
Mm-hmm.
that then she wins, even though, and you can see it, like we do this sort of like humble brag thing that we do where we talk about like, oh my God, I'm so tired and I'm so low resource, but like, look at all these cupcakes that I made, right? Like it's just whoever is able to produce the most while taking the least out of the system.
Correct.
Like,
Exactly. Yes. Yeah, exactly. That's it. And when I was watching the pleasure introduction, so like the history of where like the pleasure has been taken away or stripped away or made wrong or whatever, I was like, oh my God. And I get like this, like, I just did it about a year ago, a whole heap of interviews that I've never released, which I am going to, but it was about disruption in all different industries, right? And then as I was having the conversations, I'm like, oh my God, it all goes together. All of the systems of oppression. And I don't know why that was surprising, but when I was watching that workshop for yours, I was like, oh my God, like I think that I'm a fairly self-aware person, but I was like, I have not made any of these connections or most of those connections before. And then after that, like going into the actual, so what's part 2 and 3 in the pleasure?
Part 2 is finding your own compass, like understanding, like feeling it in your body where your yeses and your nos are, to understand how your body responds. Look, you can use that as a compass, right? Like we want to move towards the things that feel good and move away from the things that don't, always with discernment, of course, because right, there are going to be those things that are absolutely right for us where we're pushing up against our own limitations that feel terrible.
Yes.
And so more going to be those things that like feel like safety and security. And so there's a sense of home in them that are absolutely the wrong thing. So there's always discernment in it, but we have to know how we actually feel about it. And like not only emotionally feel, but like what's the actual sensations in our bodies and how do we use those in order to navigate our life? And I truly believe, people are talking about like, oh, what's the secret to life? Like, I truly believe it's do more of what you love and less of what you hate and find a way to make that
100%.
right. Like, that's simple.
And yet that is like doing what you actually desire, leaning towards your desires, doing things that feel good has been so demonized, particularly for good girls, good women, good mums, good bloody, bloody, blah, that like we're just about to, like in my personal life, we've just decided to do something massive that is a lean towards a huge desire. And oh my God, Brian, the fucking fear committee in my head is going absolutely to town. And like you were saying with Brittany before, I'm like, oh, hello, my friend. Welcome in. You absolutely have a seat at the table. You're not driving the bus, but I want to know what is so scary to you. And so much of it is societal expectation. It's not my desires. It's not my values. It's not my, like you say, the yuck and yum in the body. Like when I'm really in the feeling of doing this thing, I feel like I'm lit up from the inside. That is my yes. It's very clear yes. I am fucking terrified. But that is like, you know, the fear is there to keep us safe, and safe means what we've known. And when we're here to create revolutions in our own lives and in the world, like we're not doing known. That's scary shit. Like that's why, you know, I call to paradigm shifters, because I'm like, if you're a paradigm shifter, you know you are. And sometimes we haven't owned it yet, but like your work in the world is rubbing up and challenging so many different symptoms of oppression. It's like, oh yeah. And that's scary because we're pioneering. We're going first. It's never been done before. But I so delight in the fact that you're like, no, pleasure is protest. Like all of this is connected. Healing and politics, pleasure and protest, like actually being sovereign is insurgency. Like they're all connected. You can't do one without the other.
Well, and I mean, like Audre Lorde lays that out in that essay, which one of the reasons we've been cut off from our pleasure is because it is such a source of power.
Yeah.
It is a compass for us in the world, a way of defining ourselves. Like it has been deliberate that we have been cut off from it because, and again, like when we were talking earlier about what's happening in the world and the homogenization and all of that kind of stuff, you don't work this hard to repress something unless you know how powerful and how dangerous it is to your control.
Correct. Scary. I mean, you don't want the people to have their own sense of what's right and wrong for themselves.
And imagine if women stopped. I think about the beauty industry all the time, like the obsession that we have with like looking younger and with being thinner and like all of those kinds of things. And I think about the amount of money that we and time and energy that we spend trying to be like some version of perfect that is absolutely unachievable. I mean, right? Like even the 20-something yoga bodies don't look like they do in the magazines because they hold. Right? But if we took all of that time and energy and money and everything like that and refocused it, like we could take over the world.
Correct.
No, we have the resources for that. And so it like keep us obsessed with God, if I eat this, am I gonna gain a pound? You know, like
the easiest way to control someone is to say there's something about yourself you need to fix. So then all of the energy goes into, oh my God, you're right. I need to, and of course, us humans are very good at thinking there's something wrong with us and not the world. I am really, really interested too, when we're talking about this pleasure end of things, one of the things that you have often said to me is like moving the body is like moving the trash compactor of like, which I love because every time I get like sluggish in my head, I'm like, Tara would be telling me to start moving. And what has been wild for me, it's only a very short amount of time, but I have just committed this year to moving in ways that feel pleasurable. So I've always moved. I'm a long way away from what I used to be, which was like controlling the size of my body. That was definitely where I, was in my early life. But now I'm like, how could I move today in a way that honors myself, moves the trash compactor, keeps my energetic state? Well, actually, one of the things I'm really noticing is like I've been doing yoga just in my backyard. So whilst two dogs are trying to get me to throw a ball and it's quite chaotic, but just choosing to be in my body with no person leading me, no particular time. I'm outside. I'm usually in the morning sun. So I'm literally like, saying good morning to the sun and grounding. And I'm like, oh, this is wild because it doesn't feel like hard work, but it is opening up a day in a pleasurable way. And all of a sudden it's like, possibilities are endless. Whereas when I go to the gym and I'm only doing that sort of very structured, it tends to like tighten and narrow my point of view. And so that's like, how could I open? How could pleasure be Like the whole.
And yeah, well, I mean, yes, please. And I think you could go to the gym in that same sense of
Yes,
openness,
you could, definitely.
if that was what works for you. But like, paying attention, where is the joy? Where is what is the thing that we do that makes us go like, oh, thank God I have a body? I mean, it's such a gift, this amazing vehicle that
Vessel.
we've been given in order to explore this plane of existence. I did this meditation at one point where you like went back in, like it took you back through your life to before you incarnated this time round so that you could find out what your purpose was in coming back.
Yeah.
And I came back and I was like, I am reincarnated because I really love having a body. And then anyone else to really love having a body too. Like it's chocolate if you don't have a body, and like you're the waves, and you can't like smell a baby, like all the things that are so joy. And we so often don't give ourselves any permission to have any of those experiences because we've got our head down, we've got the deadline, and we've got
the grind, right? The grind. Worshipping at the altar of extraction, as I often say, which I'm very good at. And I'm like, oh, how about we just change direction here and worship at the altar of sacred self-reclamation? That's like basically your work in the world.
I call it the cult of self-deprivation.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a moment in time I had. I've spoken about this before on the podcast, but this moment where I was listening to a podcast with Glennon Doyle. So We Can Do Hard Things, but she was talking to someone. I can never remember who it is, and if I cared enough, I'd go backwards, but I don't. But the question was, where have you been self-abandoning? Like, how many ways and means have you been self-abandoning? And this was in an era where I was still in a corporate job. I was crying every morning before I went. I was undiagnosed ADHD, had all sorts of trauma coming to and I was just a fucking basket case. And I was like, literally every single area of my life I'm abandoning, at work, at home, in relationships, parenting, friendship, like everywhere, because I'd been so well trained to do it. And this is why I'm so passionate about helping people like you amplify their work in the world, because it's like, we need all the help we can get to come back to who we actually are underneath all of this shit.
And we need everybody's truth, right? Like in the beginning of the book, I talk about there's a Zen koan that says that truth is a mountain and all of life is standing at the base of it.
Yeah.
And depending on where you're standing, you've got to protect you. But if we want to have a bigger, more comprehensive view of what truth is, we need everybody's truth to be shared, which was one of the things that gave me permission to write a book, where it's like it's all that imposter syndrome stuff coming up and like finally come to like, okay, nobody else has got my view of Truth Mountain. So I can say I'm an expert in my view of the truth. And so like, here it is, and do with it what you want. And if it works for you, great. And if it doesn't, that's also fine. Hopefully it gets you closer to whatever your version of the truth is.
Yeah, exactly. And I always love like, when I totally get the imposter syndrome. Like, I used to book coach, so I've heard it all before, and I'm like, no, but we need all the sources of the ways to come home to ourselves, because different people are going to resonate with different people, and that's why we always talk about being your whole self. Because if you're not being your whole self in the marketplace as someone who is here to lead, people can't even see you and your magic. So yeah, that's a massive, massive part. Do you want to? Let's tie up in terms of. I want to talk about the commandments in the book, and then we'll give people the verbal URLs to everything that we've talked about, but also they're going to be in the show notes. So tell us a bit about like the concept of the commandments in the book. I love this.
Yeah. So the story comes in two parts, right? So when I first realized I didn't want to be an actor anymore, I like I said, I'd been acting since I was 6 years old, and it had been this. Like, especially once I decided it was going to be my life, like it became that sort of like homing beacon for me, right? Like I made decisions based on, does this get me closer to doing 8 shows a week on Broadway, or does it take me away? So my life was sort of very black and white in that. And when I realized being an actor didn't make me happy, so that beacon went off. So all of a sudden my entire life was gray. And like, how do you make a decision in that?
Yeah.
And thank God I was in therapy. Thank God. And my therapist had only recently like outed herself to me as an intuitive after like 3 years of work together. She finally tells me she's psychic. And I had just gone through this thing where I was considering stepping into the ministry. And I would have been a Unitarian minister because
Yes,
they'd
of
have
course.
like, you believe what you want to believe, and I believe what I want to
Mhm.
believe. And I had realized, like, for me, I often have to try on ideas like you try on clothes. Like,
Yeah.
how does it? And it's literally like, what's the sensation of it
Mhm,
in my
mhm,
body?
mhm.
And it didn't fit. It
Yeah.
didn't fit. With like, this just does not work. And so
Yeah.
I showed up for therapy and shared this. And I was kind of hoping to have a next right decision like right there. And so I told her this, and then I looked at her. I was like, "So what do you see for me?" And I didn't know she would actually like use that intuitive
Yeah.
gift. But she did. She sort of like looked off into the corner for a minute, and then she says, I can't really ever see you joining any kind of organized religion."
Yeah.
And I thought, "Yeah, that feels about right." And then she looked at me like right in the eye, and she said, "However, I can see you starting the Church of Tara and inviting other people to come." And, like, in that moment, I went, like and just clearly filed it away somewhere, and, like, sort of moved on to other things because it was not, like, this revelatory, like, "You should go into whatever," I wanted something concrete at this huge red thing. So, then fast forward, I don't know, 11, 12 years, something like that.
Mhm.
I had just gone to see a friend of mine in a show. It was my first time seeing him on stage. And I mean, it was a revelation. I mean, he stepped out and he's a person who like is pretty closed off in life. And when he stepped on the stage, he was like wide open. Like
Mhm.
he was so expansive and so radiant.
Yeah.
And like every part of me was like, yes. And so after the show, we went out and did all of the postmortem stuff. I said, finally, we're, like, at his place, it's, like, 3 o'clock in the morning, we're both drinking, like, Bullet Rye out of water glasses, and the map and he said finally, the conversation turns back to me, and he says, "You keep talking about wanting to have a larger platform, what does that" and,
Mhm.
like, in this very, like, half tipsy, drunk on his light kind of place, now out of my mouth in that moment was, "Well, if I'm really honest, I'd like 5 million people to come to the Church of Tara." And his eyes got about this big. The big, bold expressions, and he said, "All right, tell me what the Church of Tara is." And I
Yeah.
was like, "Okay, fine."
But that feels like truth.
No, and then a friend of mine said to me, I told her this story, and she said, "You keep saying you wanna have a larger platform. That's what you have to call it." And I was like, "What?" She's like, "You have to call it the Church of Tara." And I was like, "No. No, I can't call myself a church. Like, not even the craziest cult leaders call themselves a church. Whoa, people are gonna think I'm an egomaniac." And she was like, "You keep saying, like, we know as thought leaders, we need to put our stake in the sand and say
Yes,
this."
we do.
And so like, "Oh, look, and churchoftara.com and thechurchoftara.com are both available. You should buy them." And so I did, but I never expected to use them. But
Yeah.
like, I'm a good New Englander, and like, once we start paying money for something, then it feels like we need to do something.
Yeah.
One of those. It was like they were like sand in the oyster, those $26 URLs. Yeah. And so again, tumbling. And one day, like this thought sort of washed up, like, well, the there's the 10 commandments that are part of the Abrahamic religions.
Yeah.
What would be the 10
Yeah,
commandments
what
of the
would be mine? Yeah.
and I was like, "Hey, that's what the book is. But what are my 10 commandments?" And so that was how that was born. And for a long time, the title of it was like, "The Church of Tara, 10 Commandments for Getting Out of Your Own Way and Allowing Your Best Life to Unfold." But really long title.
Spiritual anarchy, much better than that.
Actually, Anarchy might be the next book because
Yeah. Well, yes, that's true.
at the moment I'm running with like operating instructions for being human. The 10 Commandments of the Church of Tara is sort of,
I like.
and it's all about how do we reconnect with ourselves and how do we, and it's things like, obviously prioritize your pleasure is a big one.
Yes.
But it's, one of them is embrace ecstatic experimentalism, right? Like the idea that instead of trying to make the right decision all the time, that the goal of any choice is more information.
Yep. Yep.
Be your own best advocate, right? Like if you are not willing to stand for yourself and your own needs and your wants, like how can you expect anybody else to? Which is
Keep moving.
I have to learn over and over again.
You're right. It's the edge.
Wait, what about me?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. And of course, the big thing, the big revelation, and it's right there at the beginning, is like, we're all churches. Every single one of us is sacred space. If you call yourself a church or a temple or a mosque or a synagogue or a sacred grove beside a sacred river, like whatever it is, you are holy in and of yourself. And you, like you always say, right? There's never been a you before, and there never will be again. And if you don't bring the full expression of yourself to the world, like all of us miss out.
Yeah. Every single one of us. And my addition to that is it's not the fuck about us. Where we are called to deliver things to the world, we need to get out of the way because it's not for us. I mean, it is for us. It's deeply satisfying to be in your life purpose, but also us choosing that we are not good enough, or that we've got an imposter syndrome and no, I can't do that, or whatever. It's stealing from the rest of us. And that is something that I just can't stand for anymore.
I truly believe, like, we talk about purpose and it's always that thing that's outside of ourselves. But I truly believe, like, in that Star Trek-y kind of way, like the prime directive for each and every one of us is to be the most fully expressed version of ourselves. Like, that's what we came here to do. And we came here to do it being human, which means being imperfect and having a body.
Yes, having a body and all the deliciousness that comes with that. Very good. So good. All right. I want to say to people that have been listening to you and just like either nodding along or going, oh, fuck, okay, I have just been called to arms. When you think about like elements coming up and or like pleasure you can get anytime. So, you know, that, and actually we should share that it is at churchoftara.com/pleasure for pleasure and /elements for elements, which is a live program that's coming up 15th to 22nd of February. If someone's listening and they're like, oh, there is something here that I am being called to lean into, what would you say to them about coming to elements?
Oh, I mean, right? If there's that part of you, I'm all about empowering people to listen to their own inner voice. Like people say to me, like after a session, so like, when can I come back? And my thing to them is always like, you know, unless there is something like, unless we didn't do all the work that could be done today, or there's something going on where I'm going to be like, okay, it would be great if I could see you back next week so that we can like finish this.
Continue. Yes.
What I am going to always tell people is please listen to yourself, listen to your own body, like see how the work settles for you, see how this conversation settles for you, and then make a decision from your own wisdom. I can't tell you what to do. You're the only authority on you. And so if you are feeling that yes in you, please come play. Please come be part of the better. Own your own witchiness. Like I would love to have you. And if it's not right for right now, or if you want to dabble in either pleasure or the other one that I have, embodied, which is all about coming back into relationship with our bodies, dabble in that. Or if none of this resonates, like go find the person who does, because there's somebody exactly. Yeah.
My God. I always love chatting with you, but thank you for bringing your magic to this show. And yeah, it's such a beautiful experience for me to be like in the presence of someone that's stepping into the bigness of the vision and actually surrendering to their magnificence. Like I use that language all the time, but it's like I am going to feel the fear or hear the Brittany, and I'm still leaning towards it because I know that this is part of my purpose. So thank you.
Thank you for your inspiration and for doing that work, because if you hadn't told Brian to sit the beat, shut up, last purpose, like I wouldn't be here right now. So
crazy, hey.
Yeah.
So good. Oh, thank you, my friend. A big love to you. All of those links are in the show notes. And thank you so much for coming.
Big love.
Bye-bye. Thanks for tuning in to another episode. If this episode lit a fire in your body, in your business, deep down in your bones, please take a moment to drop a rating and review so more rebels just like you can find us. And don't keep this goodness to yourself. Share it with your disruptive rebel and revolutionary friends who are ready to roar right alongside of you. Until next time, stay wild, stay unapologetic, and stay fucking free.